Och an lá sin gá seo nar thulas tada faoi gra geal mo chrí. Ach if níos ar a chuthe mé siúl na sléimhte trí phréá.
Absolutely honoured to be here in Greenacres today with the great sculptor Colm Brennan and the great artist Mick, and Mick is going to paint Colm now over the next hour. So it's a wonderful thing to be here in Greenacres in the heart of Wexford town in 2024, just on the eve of the great event, the Fleadh Cheoil.
You live up near Gorey. How long have you been living in Wexford? And you had the good taste to marry a Wexford woman, right?
I had the good taste, yeah. I often say, I came to Gorey first in '65, and there were two things I say. I got a good woman and a good song. Now it's Mick Doyle's song, Mick is Here. It's the Gorey Caravan, but it's a great traditional song. You never know, Mick might sing it for us later in the evening. Yes, I met Jack Dwyer's daughter, and what he said to me proved to be so prophetic and true. He says, our sow that talked to the bow. Now, I didn't know that the bow in Wexford is our equivalent of course, the banshee, or normally in English she's called the
Keenan woman.
The
yes.
Keenan woman with the comb.
Yeah.
And it's true. And Sally hasn't changed one bit. She would talk to anyone. I just say a few words about her because she can't be here today. But when we were first married, we lived in Blackrock. Going into town, we'd hop on the bus, and of course, at that stage, you hopped on the bus at the back. You know where the bar was. She'd say, "You sit down there, Colm. I'm going up to talk to that nice woman up the front." And of course, by the time we got into Dublin, Sally had her seed, breed and generation, knew all about her grandchildren, and I said to her after a while, you know, Maeve Benchy has made a lifetime experience of this, has written down, so many of her stories have been based on what she heard on the bus.
Yeah.
But Sally never followed up, but she still would talk to the bus.
Yeah, you're not a bad talker yourself, Colm. I always remember an aphorism you said to me one time when we were looking at a Paul Henry painting, and you said to me, when I see a Paul Henry painting, I reach for my umbrella.
Well, no, I wish that was an original. Someone else said that a long time before me, but I think it perfectly captures what Paul Henry, and of course Paul Henry was in the West, you have to remember. Not Wexford.
Yeah.
He was in the West and he loved it. He bought a two-way ticket, but stayed so many years.
Would you, so Colm, but your own Duchess, as it were, and you have a great sense of place, you would be a Mayo man born, bred and buttered?
Very definitely, without a doubt, yeah.
And you know, that Mayo background is something that you'd be very proud of?
Not just proud of, but would guard it fiercely. You know, as a mother would her child. I suppose this is where I would spar with the Wexford people who think that 1798 only happened in Wexford. We'd say, well, a little bit happened in Mayo too.
With the emphasis on the little there, Colm?
Well, you see, the French did decide to land in Killala.
Yeah.
They did march on Ballina, they captured Killala and Ballina. Then they went by a circuitous route to Castlebar, surprised the Crown forces, and one of the very few outstanding successes, later called the races of Castlebar, because the English forces raced towards Tuam, throwing off, a bit like the 6-Day War, throwing off boots and everything else, anything to lighten their baggage while they hurried back to the safety of Tuam. And of course in Wexford as well.
Yes.
I mean, the West Corps, the Cork militia are still hated, as if it happened only yesterday. This is one of the things I love about Wexford, that 98 only happened a few weeks ago. It's a very recent phenomenon. I love that about it.
Seamus Heaney, who wrote the famous poem Requiem for the Crofties, when he first came to Boulevaux, there was a local Wexford lad and he was asking him, wasn't this where Father Murphy was from? And your man looked at him, the Wexford fella, and kind of said, this fella with a northern accent, and kind of said to him, yeah, this is where he was from, but there's a different priest there now. Which I thought was putting Seamus well in his spot, for Seamus loved that. But the Mayo bit for you, Colm, it would be true to say, like the Mayo, you say Belmullet and all that, where you have ancestry,
yes.
You know, that's a wilder kind of landscape, and the sea, the ocean, all of that. You grew up with that, and maybe, but in Wexford it's a more farming kind of landscape and whatever. How do you make the transition from the Atlantic coast to the Irish Sea coast?
With great difficulty initially. When I first came to Wexford in '65, and I saw the riches, the incredible riches of land, and you know, once you see deciduous trees everywhere, you know you're in good land. As I mentioned in the song, a land just good enough to grow ash will also grow hurling teams.
Yeah.
We don't have good land in Mayo. I was amazed. Amazed also at the welcome I got in Wexford, and still feel. I love Wexford.
Yeah, it's a paradoxical thing though, because in Ireland, 1 out of every 2 people who have been born on our island have emigrated, and it's true to say a lot of them would have come from Mayo, and you know, and along the western seaboard as well. But Wexford, ironically, because it had the farm families, and farm families tended to keep the land in the same. You know, they never gave up on the land, even when they were dispossessed in the 17th century, 16th, 17th century. They became tenant farmers, and I could bring you down to South Wexford and show you, you know, the Deverexes in Kilmore, or in the same farm since when they first came in with the Normans, right? And there's loads of families, like Wexford farming families in particular in Wexford. There can be more continuity in Wexford than there is in Mayo, because family farms have survived, and there's a lot of tradition in Wexford, which people don't tend to think about. Now, you would also be, Colm, very interested, obviously, in the Irish language, and you're a great sean-nós singer. So how important for you is that Irish language and, shall we say, Gaelic background? And I know you're also a descendant of Raftery and Fleadh, Anthony Raftery, the great poet.
Distant relative, yes. Very proud of that, naturally.
Yeah, but the Irish language tradition, the sean-nós, your daughter, Elaine is a great Irish language teacher, and you reared her in the Irish language, as it were. So like the Irish language, the Irish tradition, that really matters to you, and does that infuse your work as well?
Very, very much so, yes. Like frequently in approaching a possible commission, you know, through a public competition, and most of the public pieces I have been through public competitions, I very often start with the place name and place name of Gaelic, and that very often gives me an entree into what the approach might be. The first tentative doodles might come directly from the place name.
Yeah. Now, you see, this is something most people wouldn't know about Mick O'Dea, but Mick began as a sculptor, you know, and like say Mick is talking there about putting marks on the blank page. How are you getting on there, Mick?
Oh, awful.
No, but
no, grand. Just kind of motoring along, Kevin, for want of a better way of putting it, you know.
Yeah.
Enjoying the discourse and the kind of movement.
Yeah. Okay. But so the sculpting is different than the painting, because obviously sculpting is in 3 dimensions, you know, whereas paint is 2-dimensional. So like it's a different kind of thing. Do you think, Colm, in your case, I know we talked about this, but you had stonemasons in your family, you were very interested in blacksmithing. Your father was a national school teacher, but he also liked fiddling with clocks and, you know, watches and what we now maybe call
machinery of
all kinds.
Yes.
And I know as a child you said you used to hang around the forge, which is a magical kind of place for a child anyway. But from your point of view, and to me also, like I think it's important to say, your mother was a midwife, right?
Yes, indeed.
My mother was a midwife as well.
Yeah, well, there you go. people established. But my point about that is, in the Irish tradition, all of those were considered to be, shall we say, learned professions. The traditional midwife was a banfassa, a woman of women, you know, who had nimble fingers and skills. There's a wonderful poem from Mayo, actually, of the priest kind of complaining to the midwife, the traditional banfassa, and she's kind of saying, you know, basically, you stick to your trade, I'll stick to mine. My fingers are much more skilled than yours. Do you know what I mean? Like, and sculpting is really a thing with the hands, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But like, do you think from your thing, growing up with that, like that the craft tradition, the stone masonry, which is really those beautiful walls of the west of Ireland, the whole business with, you know, bringing new life into the world, which is what your mother did. You know, the forge. There's a wonderful poem by Seamus Heaney where he talks about the forge. But what he talks about really is the magic that happens when, you know, when the shoe or whatever is hot and then it's plunged in the water and the sparks come out. It's like it's a poem by Seamus really about creativity. So as a child, was your imagination fired by all that? And did you think when you became a sculptor, do you think you're still in the tradition of your ancestors in that way?
I would think so. Without thinking deeply about it, but now that you put the question, like whatever gift any of us have, I think we've no idea where it comes from. It's a very elusive thing, and I suppose we're all afraid to probe too deep into it. But we know that it's something outside of ourselves.
Yes, because in the Irish tradition as well, it was like the word there, fassa, comes from fis. Fis means, it can mean wisdom or knowledge or inherited experience, but it can also mean, as you just said there, a gift. And in the Irish tradition, the idea was like that, and fé is another word that was used, fé na filiachta, you know, would run in families. Some families were good at sport, some people were good at music, other people were good at talking, whatever. But the scale or the gift went down through particular families. But it was a kind of a gift, so that, say when Mick is painting or drawing there, you know, the gift to be able to do that, it's something that it's got almost magical because it comes from outside you, in the same way as being a gifted sculptor. Do you think of it as a gift that comes to you from outside, not something that you have generated just through yourself?
Very definitely. And of course, you mentioned the blacksmith. In the Irish tradition, the blacksmith was always regarded as being half magician.
Yeah. And
it's interesting, in the African tradition, you have exactly the same thing. The blacksmith is regarded as magician. And there's also in the Irish tradition, there's a link between midwife, birth, and the blacksmith. If there was any delay or difficulty, the blacksmith was often called. Linked to that, I just think of a beautiful story my mother told me. It's not a story, it's just a tiny little incident from her life. She started off when she was qualified in the late 20s in Caltanilla in Connemara. That was her first posting. And she was there for a few years. And after a number of years, she moved to Ardmore, which was another world, moving from subsistence Galway to comparatively rich land in Ardmore, in East Galway. And she was telling me that she saw this tradition in so many of the houses that when the child was born, and this referred particularly to a boy child, on his first night of this world, he was placed to sleep in the horse's collar. And of course, it was the whole thing of sympathetic magic, that he would take the strength from the horse. And it's something I've never come across anywhere else, or I've never come across in the book, but it's such a beautiful imagery of the first day of the child on this earth being placed in a horse's collar.
Yeah. You're a friend of mine, Louis Le Brockie, the great artist who was a neighbour of mine in Dublin. He said, he was talking about the great rock paintings and the prehistoric paintings of South France, but he talked about the brain in the hand, you know, which, like somebody like me who can't do a hand's turn around the house, couldn't even hammer a nail, absolutely useless with anything like that, useless at drawing or anything else. When I see people like you and Mick, you know, who are skilled with their hands, That idea like that, there's a kind of an intelligence or a brain or an instinct in the hands. He talked about the brain in the hand. Do you think that that's really important to be a sculptor or an artist?
It's difficult to know how to answer that. Like, obviously, that whatever extra connection there is between, what people call the hand and eye connection, but obviously it's brain or optic nerve, brain and hand coordination.
Yeah.
Again, who knows? Who knows why one child will suddenly be the fastest child in the county? We don't know, or someone else will. We all have gifts, but perhaps they're all not discovered early enough, or not nurtured enough.
Yeah, but you're still back to the gift. Mick, what the hell are you doing there with those lines around the face?
These are all like radar. You send out them and you start to kind of find the object that you're looking for, and the closer, but they're the pulses that are being sent out. These lines here are a tone to try and make the head project, because when I look at Colm, the light's coming from here and I see the head against the dark background. So my plan now is to put in a wash, which may or may not be successful, in order to project the head. So I'm looking at Colm's head and it's visible to me because the background is darker.
Yeah. So why do you think the wash mightn't be successful?
Because it might be the wrong tone, it might overpower it and make the drawing, like here now, for instance, could kind of negate all the drawing, and then maybe the marks underneath that created the image so far, it might overpower it. So that all you see is the background and not the figure. And therefore, you're setting up problems for yourself. But nothing that can't be, I like to get into trouble as quickly as possible and then spend the rest of the time trying to get my way out of it.
Well, I once heard a fellow say that darkness was the architect's friends, because it hid all their mistakes.
Yeah.
So with you, is the second wash your friend, because it hides your area? I only decided to do this right now, so often when you're kind of involved in the thing, stuff starts to present itself, and your better instinct might say don't do it, but then when you have an audience you want to show off. So there's all sorts of things at play. Including, it could be a very public meltdown as well. And are you getting a vibe off Colm now?
I am, yeah, very much. Look at Colm, it's got a great strength of presence, personality, face, everything. So yeah, getting a very strong read, for want of a better way of putting it.
10 minutes ago, before you even mentioned your mum, and my dad's and mommy lived to 105, I said to Emer in the back of the room, when we only started to sketch, I said, oh my goodness, it looks like my granny. And then straight away you started talking about granny. So it was so weird that in the initial sketching, I saw Nana looking at me. So bizarre.
It's a funny thing, when I'm painting, sometimes people see there all sorts of ancestors come
weird.
And go.
Yeah.
No sooner are they there, but they're gone again.
Now it's more dad.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing, isn't it? That so you could again back to the féin affiliate, féin Hélín, and whatever the gift for that and the feeling, because there is a thing where there has to be again with you, Colm, like what, because we talked about it, inspiration, which is really the word means to breathe into, and inspiration in the Irish tradition. It's something that kind of comes into you or is blown into you from outside, like that famous tune, Port na Pookie, the fairy tune, which comes in on the air and you have to kind of take it down. But for you, the inspiration, you told me earlier this week when I was chatting to you that when you're thinking about painting, or not painting, but a sculpture, that sometimes you wake up in the morning, halfway between being awake and being asleep, and that the image or the sculpture will appear in fully formed image in your mind. Is that true?
That's when it happened for me. Other people say, writers say it's when they go for a walk in the woods or something like that. But for me, it's that half awake, half asleep, and usually in the early morning, yes. And it's there. All I've got to do then is go and make it.
So you kind of reverse engineer then to kind of say, here's the finished product, now I've got to kind of think, how do I get from the start back to the finish? But the thing appears like on your retina, like a visual image of it.
It appears completed, but then I've got to break it down and find out, now, how do I make this? What do I make it from? Will there be structural problems? Will there be, whatever, casting problems? Whatever. Because usually bronze, I'd be thinking bronze, but very often stainless steel as well.
But and back to the image though, so does that come to you, after you've been thinking about something for a while, or does it come, does something come to you that you haven't been thinking about?
It would usually be, I would usually have primed the pumps. I know that's a hackneyed phrase, but yes, I would have usually primed the pumps maybe a few days earlier or maybe the previous day through reading the brief for a particular commission or whatever, or it might be just that a particular creature has begun to fascinate me and I want to kind of realise that in 3D.
But it does literally almost manifest or materialise in your your visual.
Yes, and like there's no way of explaining that. Well, I can't explain it to myself certainly. All I can say is that it happens, and I'm very glad that it happens.
Do you think some people are more susceptible to that than others? Like my mother, like many Irish people, my mother could always feel a day or two in advance if something bad was going to happen in the family or whatever. And in the Irish tradition there was the thing about the fetch, where you saw somebody that you didn't expect to see and then you heard and said that, do you think some people are more, and we'll find out this more about how we're wired neurologically, that some people are more susceptible to that than others? And that's really the artistic thing, it's not so much the physical work, but the imaginative kind of thing.
I honestly don't know. I'm almost afraid to think of that because it just happens. But I don't know why it happens.
Yeah.
I'm very happy it does.
Yeah. No, I know, but Seamus Heaney had a nervous breakdown from that, literally because he kind of felt that the gift could go and he started thinking too much about it and so we move on now. But there is a kind of a sympathetic magic in it, isn't it? It is a form of magic. There's something that wasn't there suddenly appears.
Yes. But as I say, with the pumps being primed.
Yes, with the pump being primed. Mick, as a man who was reared in a pub and is well able to talk, right? Mm-hmm. Down in Ennis, which I think. No, I've always kind of thought that people who are reared in pubs have a tremendous gift for talking because you have to learn to talk to every kind of person. But for you then, Mick, and I know I've seen some of your early stuff when you were in school, you were already drawn with felt tip pens and things. Mm-hmm. So you were always kind of drawn to a terrible pun, but anyway.
Yeah.
Did you feel, how did you know that you wanted to be an artist is what I'm saying? When did you know?
Well, I kind of, from looking at the hardship that my parents went through running the business, I decided it's not for me really. But I was meant to be the farmer in the family, so, but you know what, I didn't take to that particularly great either. I went through the routines, but I didn't have it in me, and I don't think I'd have been a good farmer to tell you the truth, I felt that there was. I was a townie, so townies are kind of no good for anything really. You're neither anyone who's brought up in the country is kind of they can get in under an engine, they can fix things.
Yeah,
townies will tell you what's on in the cinema.
You know what? What your friend of mine, Tony O'Malley, who was, who spent a lot of time in Wexford and painted a lot of Wexford out in still and all that. Well, Tony was also in Clare as a bank manager, bank clerk.
Yes.
And he described Dennis Steinman where he was as the parish priest pretending to be sober and the bank clerks pretending to be drunk. And he also said, God made the country, man made the town, and the devil made the small town. Is that what you were saying about Ennis, Mick?
Well, I guess what happened to me is that I started going to I was interested in history because I was interested in stories, and we were very lucky in our pub that the local newspaper used our premises as their front office, for want of a better way of putting it. It was the Clare Champion. So any visiting journalists or writers or people of, who had maybe something to contribute would come into the bar, and you couldn't but be privy to what was going on. So I kind of, I got a lot of interesting kind of life stories by default for just being present in the place, or maybe we used our shop as a ladder, so I'd have to go out to get butter or milk, which meant passing behind the counter and just being exposed sometimes to kind of heated arguments, which I found fascinating, the way people could get really all worked up, particularly I suppose we give a few pints as well. Because we had to be on duty all the time, Kevin, in other words,
you were never off.
You were on call, and when the place got busy, my bedroom was over the shop, and there was the back stairs of the house went over that, and a shout above to be Michael, you're wanted. So you had to be around, and I spent my time up in my room when I wasn't working. With my little toy soldiers and drawing. And then I was interested in history. And then at school, history books are usually well illustrated. And then I discovered the authors of these illustrations were often painters or sculptors from the past. And so I started getting interested in the pictures that were in the history books. And finding out that they were done by someone, and then hearing about things like the Renaissance, and then going up the local library, started getting books in on art, and Time Life series came out in the early 70s that I was particularly drawn to, and I started reading the biographies. There weren't like deep biographies, there was lots of lavish illustrations is what attracted me, because I was interested in comics. And I suppose I was interested in comics because of pictures. But anyway, I discovered that these people actually existed. They tried out different things and maybe ended up being artists. And I thought maybe that wouldn't be such a bad way to go through life, that I liked the kind of maybe the uncertainty of it. It had a touch of cowboy films. You never knew what was going to be around the corner.
Yeah, and we all like cowboys and Indians.
And I like cowboy films, and I kind of like the idea of you don't know what's going to be around the corner or something like that. And that kind of life, for whatever reason, interested me. And so how did I get interested in art? It was by default, drawing, history, stories, and then maybe deciding from reading these Time Life books that there could be, you could actually maybe find that as a way of living your life.
Yeah.
That you could actually. And then when I went to Dublin, I heard, we had an art teacher who was very encouraging. Jim Hennessy, who's from Dungarvan, County
Waterford.
And he was the first art teacher in the school. He went there a year before I started the school, and which was in 1971. So he went there in 1970. The school was founded in the 1830s, but had no tradition of art whatsoever. But I guess Jim anyway got the job as a full-time art teacher, and he opened up my eyes to the world as well. And a lot of us, I mean, for instance, I think that young fellas can be very reactionary because my early memories are of going into the art room in first year and Jim having pictures by Picasso on the wall. And they were quite challenging in their own way, you know. Like for instance, you get two eyes on the one side of the face. And I remember one of the young fellas said, "Sir, sure that's not art, sir. Like, look, your man has got two eyes on the one side of his face." And I remember Jim's first word was, "Shut up, boy, you're ignorant."
What did he say to him?
"Shut up, boy, you're ignorant." And you know, then I remember him bringing in classical music, playing it, and one of the lads saying, "Sure, that's only Slavic music, sir." And he said, "Shut up, boy, you're ignorant." So he exposed us to something that we would otherwise have not been exposed to, challenged us. And by the time I did my Leaving Cert, 6 of us went to our college. Now I went to NCAD, but apparently we were the first 6 ever to go to our college from our school. And that's about 120, 130 years, you know. So, it was really, I had good fortune in both primary school and secondary school in that I was encouraged and met the right people. So, you know, I had a lucky trajectory, Kevin. And, so.
But Mick, what you would be, I mean, you paint many different kinds of things, but I suppose you would be very famous as a portrait painter and would have done a lot of important portraits in the National Gallery and elsewhere as well. What attracted you to the portrait painting?
It was a bit like, it was that famous, you know that quote, "What attracted you to the millionaire?" Yeah, Paul Daniels. The money, Kevin. I guess I always just, I found it really fascinating looking at images of people and marveled at how, before the invention of the camera, that these people were painted and, you know, and they're passed down to us. And it also was a way of me tangibly measuring my progress. Technically, if I could, I needed to paint people. Even though at the time it was regarded as kind of old hat, you know, that the College of Art had a kind of a revolution to try and get rid of drawing as this particular type of drawing as an essential way of measuring someone's ability, and I could see why all that happened, but I really needed to be able to draw people, so I was just drawn to them. And I think you mentioned the pub, and I think it's been just brought up. I was literally brought up in a public house. And I remember at my mother's funeral, I did the eulogy, and it just came to me that being brought up in a public house was, in our one in particular, was a bit like being brought up in the corridor of a house. You just didn't know who you were going to meet, who was going to be coming in next. So, and I think that painting gave me privacy. It allowed me to get away, and I needed my own time. I needed privacy.
So now, like, it's looking from behind here, where I can see both Colm and the image of Colm, and it's kind of magical the way the simulacrum of Colm suddenly appears there as well, and it's like you're looking at some kind of refracted twin. So what are you trying to do there now, Mick? You've got the main frame there, right? You're happy with your backdrop, but what are you doing now? You're putting on the nice little touches now, are you?
Well, I'm not going to get his hands in because of the way I did it, but I just want to get something of the presence and the curiosity, the listening, the engaging with you, the engaging with me, and it's the moment. It's all about the moment. And I'm an intuitive. I'm not an intellectual. And I'm not an intellectual painter, I'm more an intuitive, responsive type of individual. And so I'm literally going on sensation, Kevin, for want of a better way of putting it, you know. So that's why I'm operating on sensation.
Yeah. Colm, I want to come back to you now as well. We're all, well, maybe you're not, but we're all, well, I am, watching the Olympics, you know, and I'm always looking, now I know there was a 52-year-old in one of the competitions, but generally speaking, if you're an athlete or some of the things which require a lot of physicality, you're not necessarily going to get better as you get a bit older. But do you think being a sculptor or being an artist, or in some respects people live with the life of the mind, that if you're any good at it, you get better as you get older? Do you think you're a better sculptor now than you were 40 years ago?
Good question. I certainly can edit the work a little bit. I mean, edit my own work a little bit. Yeah. I would say that artists generally improve with age. That's why you rarely hear of an artist saying, "Oh, I'm retired." It just doesn't happen.
Because it's a lifelong illness or a lifelong, you know, it's in the...
You do it because you must.
Yeah, because you must. So you're never ever going to escape it or let it go, are you? But it gives...
I wouldn't think so, no.
No, but it gives your life a kind of an arc of meaning, and it is, you know, it is something wonderful that if you look, say, at Jack B. Yeats, I think the greatest paintings he did were in the, you know, when he was like in his 70s and 80s. So like it's something you can be really good at as you get older.
I think so. I think so.
Mick, in your case now too, like...
I think it's an old man's game, or an old woman's game. You're in for a long shot. I mean, you can get thrills. Like athletes get their great thrills and accomplishments and highs as younger people, and it's fantastic. The thing about this thing is that you can keep getting the thrills even more.
Colm, in your case too, like it's almost like, I don't mean schizophrenic personality, but in your sculptures, which we have all around us, over here, you know, you have ones which are steel and like very modern looking, and you know, with express forms and like different things like that. Then you have ones which are, shall we say, more in an Irish kind of tradition with Irish themes. You know, so like it's kind of abstract, and none of your work really is all that figurative either. Do you think you have two kind of different strings to your bow, that you like these geometrical ones and then you like the storytelling ones?
Without a doubt. And of course, it's, to anyone who's heard me talk in the past, this will sound hackneyed, but quite a few years ago, must be 30 years ago, I said to some interviewer that, you know, I tread twin paths between realism and abstraction. And that's still true. And of course, to qualify that, someone else said, well, any good piece of figurative art has abstract qualities to it, and many good pieces of abstract art may have its origins in something figurative. And I certainly subscribe to that.
Yeah. Again, you know, with the pieces you've done over here, which are kind of like Mick was talking there about playing with toy soldiers. Sometimes kids play with Meccano or other kind of things, or like those kind of stuff. But do you find that young children in particular, say with your abstract kind of stuff and stuff where you're playing with form and that young children can kind of see it more quickly sometimes than adults?
Absolutely. I'm amazed. I'm always amazed at that. Quite there's a piece I have in Blackrock, and essentially think of it as a 20-foot high plank of steel. Now I'm talking about a plank this dimension by this dimension, and it's as if magically a giant has come across it and cleaved down part of it and stretches out and it falls and it bends, and on the other side something else happens. It's cut and it's falling in another direction. Many adults will look at that and say, what in the name of God is that all about? Almost invariably children will say, oh, I can see. You can just shove that up there and it'll all fill and it'll be all one again. I'm amazed that, you know, that children obviously have that untainted ability. Later on they become self-conscious and they're almost afraid to say what they can see. Yeah. And adults certainly frequently are afraid to say what they can see, lest someone would laugh at them. well, it's not that, it's something else.
As Mick spoke beautifully there about his art teacher and somebody who challenged him or maybe pushed him or opened a different path for him. The word used there was the path. Do you wonder sometimes with children, and we have to have it, like schooling and education and all that, but do you sometimes think that the earlier child, where the magic is still there and they have their imaginary friends and their imagination is very pure at that stage? Do you sometimes think like a more formal education or the kind of thing where you say, okay, the way people say, what job are you going to get with that, or you should choose a career, like your university career or whatever, based on what job you get at the end of it. Do you sometimes, like you have grandchildren now,
yes.
Do you sometimes find that their imagination is more open, say, than people who are in the middle of their careers?
Without a doubt, and probably more open than mine has been at many stages. Now, part of that, they're lucky enough to have gone, and one of them has just finished Steiner preschool, where they're outside, rain, hail or snow, half the day they're outside, and I just think that's very, very valuable. And just like I think the summers I spent in those two tiny farms in Mayo, the farm my dad was born in between Petromar and Knock, and the farm I was from, and my mother was born in Mungsborn and Thrall, out in the wilds of Earth, North Mayo. That outdoor life, and indeed, when I became a townie, to use Mick's phrase, and it's true, I moved into Whelan, but certainly back in the late 40s and 50s, I was gone as a child. From early morning, I was gone, and very often I was living right beside the Moy River, a large river with a number of tributaries, and quite close by. I'd be gone, walking up maybe a few miles up one of those tributaries, or the other place I was found was in the forge. Yeah. And that was a magical kindergarten. So yes, young children were fortunate enough to be given the scope to be themselves. So I think that they're lucky.
Because like when you do that, sometimes you will fall or you get thorns in your feet or you'll forget. You know what I mean? Like you put yourself in the harm way. But children learn from that as well. My mother used to talk about good, clean dirt. Like if you were working. Whereas now, like kids can be a little bit maybe cosseted or manicured, but kids like need a certain freedom, right? To explore and find themselves in a way.
Yes, and I think even the medical people would say that let them out, let them experience what is in the field and so on, and they'll build up resistance that the overprotected child will never have.
Yeah, and again there, like, it comes back to you, doesn't it? Like you have all these wonderful sculptures of the birds and, like you're obviously very attracted to them, and you have beautiful sculptures of sheep. I'm lucky enough to own one of them myself. The black-faced Wicklow mountain sheep, which was the terror of my young life. My mother didn't like dogs because her aunt had been killed by a dog running under a bike, and my father bought what was called jumbled sale sheep, the sheep that the farmers wouldn't buy. My father had a good eye for them. Yeah. But we were affecting his sheepdogs because we didn't have a dog, and we were the two-legged sheepdogs. Them bloody black-faced mountain sheep from Wicklow cannot be kept within field. Anyway, out to go. We were it. But I'm just looking at all the, you grew with that, but this why, they are like nature. You have the veteran and the all the song. You're attracted obviously to bird song. You have that beautiful sculpture over there of O'Neill the Name with the birds above your head. Birds feature a lot in your, So for you, is that your kind of ambient environment, like the soundscape? The soundscape of your life is the Irish language and the bird song.
It's certainly one of the ways. Just back to O'Neill the Name. I can still recall. My father, who was a primary teacher, I attended his school for a number of years, a tiny two-teacher school, a place called Gurtnamoe out near the Ox Mountains. And he reading O'Neill the Name to us. Of course, he told us that it was a story of Porrick Pierce's. And just to hear just the music of it alone Shage Gala Foreigner, Latin Dorcas Dalo, Fiera Honic Oin shot, Arabeja Kajukish the Mark. This poor young lad who he didn't realise that he had a fatal illness. He would go out each evening, sit on the rock outside the house, waiting for the swallows to come. And they still hadn't come, and he was obviously day by day getting weaker. He'd come in and he'd say to the mother, sure, maybe they'll come tomorrow. And the poignancy of that, like to a young child, but it was the music of the words that got me.
Yeah. And, it seems an odd thing to say, but sometimes which are beautiful, and beautiful is a weak word, which are very resonant. There's like resonance is a word too, that like the sound that comes out of something. Do you feel like sometimes in your sculptures, especially of birds, that you're looking for that resonance, that it's almost as if you could hear the bird song coming from the sculpture if it works?
Well, hopefully, yes.
I'm doing your PR for you now.
Yes, of course. And of course, there are birds that you probably would only see in the salties, a place like that, the puffin. I would see them off the west coast too, go to a place like Skelly. Like, I was amazed to find that puffins don't make a nest, they make a burrow.
Yeah.
I was absolutely flabbergasted by that. And of course, that Star Wars, when they went to film on Skelly, wondered what they're going to do. There are puffins everywhere. And they managed to incorporate them through the magic of
But in my opinion, that should never have been allowed, because nowadays you can't get Skellig, Biheel, which is the most magical thing we have in the whole island. It's now, it's commercialised and monetised in a way it should never have been allowed. But I won't get on a high horse about that. Well, I could, and I will. I have a whole stable full of hobby horses that I can wheel out. Mick, what are you doing now? Because see, like the wash that you started with, where you put a kind of a halo around St. Colm there. What are you doing with that now? You're changing the colour of it again.
Well,
what are you trying to do?
The tone of it was dark. The great thing about acrylic is it dries very quickly. So I put it down, it's dark. So with a very nice polychromous coloured pencil, which is a high pigmentation in it, I put a kind of a yellow over it, and it gives you a closer read of the tone that's on the wall, where the artificial light is showing on it. So I felt that the ground that was behind Colm was too dark, so I just brought the tone up a little bit. So it's a tonal relationship, and I'm playing around with that. I'm kind of suggesting the hands, a bit of red braces reveal themselves, and I just thought I'd give it a little shot there. That was a gift that came 40 minutes into the portrait, so I'm an opportunist, and will seize any opportunities that present themselves. So that's really that, Kevin.
Yeah, how close are you to being finished now?
Well, I'm aware that this is a limited amount of time, hence the
No, we're
I am very close to being finished. This is now finished at any stage. If you were to call halt now, that time is up. And I'm on union rates, as you know. So if time were called, I'm happy to leave.
How do you? Now. Yeah, well, let me ask you another question. How do you know the damn thing is finished and that you don't overdo it?
No, in a situation like this, in this kind of environment, you just run out of time.
No, but how do you know when the thing is finished?
Well, I know because I decided to kind of do a loose treatment, use acrylic in combination with colour pencils for about an hour, and I geared myself to this. It's a bit like I've trained for the 100 metres rather than for the half marathon.
Well, yeah, I should have put you into the freaking triathlon and make you swim up the slimy. Colm, did you want to come in?
Another approach to that question you asked Mick, and of course, this isn't original, but someone a long time ago said 2 people are necessary to make a work of art. The artist and someone else with the gun to take it from them before you overlook
Which is true as well.
I think today's the third, is it not?
Yeah. But Mick, I'm going to say something rather nasty now.
What? I've had to deal with fellas like you before.
Yeah. Anyway, in University of Notre Dame, we have one of your preliminary drawings for the portrait of Brian Fleadh that you have in the National Gallery.
Yeah.
And I kind of think your preliminary drawing, the wonderful one, where Brian Fleadh, like many artists, and now Colm is unusual because it's very open in a way, but many artists, or poets, writers, you know, their inner life is more vivid, and they don't, you know, they live in their mind really. And I've seen that with Seamus Heaney and Brian Fleadh, who were both friends of mine and lucky enough to be that. But Brian Fleadh had a characteristic thing, like when he went to repose, his hands went like that and he closed his eyes. And you drew him like that. And it was almost like you told me that you had told him the session was over, and then he relaxed and did that, and then you painted him like that. And in some ways, to me, like that drawing, which is very quick and vivid, has an incredible likeness to the Fleadh that we knew. Do you mean? Whereas the more formal bit where you've embellished it and put the paintings on it and made it, you know, National Gallery-esque. I don't know, do you, terrible question to ask you, but, you know what I mean, is it difficult to move from the quick sketch and where it's there in front of you to the finishing and the polishing of it and the making it, you know, do you lose something or there's a game?
You get mentally prepared, so see, maybe for a writer, you know, or a poet, they may write a few songs, you know, and you're mentally prepared for that. So you kind of think, okay, you're thinking of time, you're thinking of the nature of the job, and you would be familiar with that, Colm, you know, because you do so many public commissions. So you just gear yourself. But I do know that some people only connect drawings because they find the immediacy and the mark making and the calligraphic qualities of it appeal to them more than the more finished things. And people have said to me that they prefer my preliminary drawings because of maybe the energy or whatever else it is in them that appeals to them. So no, to answer your question, the preliminary ones can often have more of the mark, more of the human, more of the journey of how the piece emerged than maybe the finished painting.
Are you happy now that you've reached
I think in the circumstances, yes, I am.
Gos shisha chodache, gar chiapas garbi ashling nonio. A groyal maralile, gos kol groige marasin tel. Fall through a tichum, a biola hojergele fwill. Da cheris, keishere fwiananam. A fwyl gos a chlon, Shedor chishe garba sidlian drishla, Wyn chirwam. Grow a har salje, a trau an nari gewor, Gos alva hanam oie, Gumishi hagam ar sto.